Today we are back for another episode of the Automator series, and I'm with Trish today, Trish Prevost, and she's had a very wild journey. You could say she's an ex-physiologist, physio, and an ex-kinesiologist, but she's been on such a journey that I'm actually just going to straight away give the platform over to her to introduce herself. But firstly, thanks so much for taking the time out and jumping on a call with me today.
Oh, thank you, Gavin. It's great to be here. I appreciate you connecting with me and finding me. That's amazing. So, yeah, thank you for the intro. It's true. I mean, I've had 28 years of studying the human body. Was so interested in that and did a first degree in kinesiology, which led me into the School of Rehab Medicine in Toronto. I studied physiotherapy and earned my degree there, and graduated in the year 2000 and worked for 20 years. A little bit of an interruption, obviously, to have a couple children, but other than that, just worked steadily as a physio in different settings, in different venues, and really mostly ended up, the focus was working in private practice, busy private practice clinics where, sometimes physios are kind of moving through, like, depending, on the clinic, like 3-4 people an hour. So that sort of framework it wasn't actually always easy for me to maintain. It was something that I noticed that I just wanted to spend more time with people, connecting and kind of hearing their story. So eventually, in the final job that I had here locally in our town of 𝗤𝘂𝘁cie𝗺𝗿, which is in British Columbia in Canada near Vancouver, I just asked if I could sort of start seeing people, just 2 people an hour. And my approach was a little bit different than I think the rest of the physios, where they were having more of an active approach, get the people in the clinic, get them doing their exercises while they were there. But I just sort of wanted more of that approach of just connecting and hearing people's stories, spending the full half an hour with them. I felt like, the onus is on them to take care of their exercises and do those things when they left the clinic. And long story short is, it just kind of eventually meant that I broke away from working in a traditional clinic, opened something at home, and worked for 7 years at home with a home-based business here, and would see people for an hour, like spend a lot of time with them and do different things, because I had a bunch of different tools in my toolkit. And it's been interesting. It's been a journey. And then when COVID hit, I think I just sort of decided to basically, like, unbox it and leave it all behind, and just be able to rest sort of in the center of, like, a scientific background that is meeting up with my intuitive gifts that have been returning over the years through treating the human body.
Yeah, no, there's a whole bunch of points that you raised there, which I think already would really piques like listeners' ears. And the fact that you mentioned you were in this setting, you're working in a business, and you just felt the way they were doing it was like not quite right. It sounded like to you, it felt like they were just kind of like, get people in, get people out, get people in, just like trying to process them as quick as possible. And like that didn't feel right to you.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, it just, for me personally, and there's some people that are just so fabulous at it. And of course you need it. Like, in the case of acute injuries and in the case of rehabbing after surgeries, it's absolutely needed. I have so many friends and colleagues that are still doing it, and it's just absolutely needed when the physical body has broken down, right? But for me, when clients would come in, and they come in with these convoluted presentations. And I find it kind of ironic that I used to think, like, why can't I just get the simple ankle sprains? Like, why do I have all these people with a very, like, chronic presentation, multiple amounts of injuries? And now that is, like, my passion. What I love to kind of start to unwind is, like, you come with this whole history of, like, old injuries and new, and, like, pains, and maybe there's, like, depression or insomnia layered on top of that. Like, let's unwind it all. Like, let's figure it all out. And so here I am, where now that is, like, my total passion, right? So just to put the whole puzzle pieces together and bring someone into alignment, but do it definitely on, like, a mind, body, spirit, and, you know, mental, emotional perspective, looking at it holistically, there wasn't quite time for that in a typical clinic setting. And so I would almost have a little bit of anxiety, like kind of looking through the patient list of the day and kind of feeling like, I don't know. So obviously that right away was a sign that if that was making me feel almost short of breath, you know, already, and you're trying to plan the day, that doesn't feel in alignment with like where I want to be. And yet I knew, like, studying the body and just this career as a physiotherapist was such a gift. Like, it's just been an amazing gateway to so many unbelievable things. So it just didn't quite mesh, but then, you know, so I naturally sort of broke away from it and just felt more at ease and at peace when I didn't feel rushed, and when I stopped making a plan for what I think people next needed, you know. So it's like a lot of that in my personal growth as, you know, a health practitioner just kept evolving, because I used to kind of go, okay, last time we worked on maybe like shoulder blade and rotator cuff strength. This time we need to work on deep neck flexor stability. Like, what if someone comes to the clinic and they had just been in a little car accident, or they had had a rough morning? You're not going to be able to work with the body like that. So eventually I just would be like, chill in here and just like, hey, what's up? Like, what are we doing? You know, you're just going to meet someone where they're at, and that's going to make a better connection right off the bat. Like, I can't have a plan for how their healing is going to go. Like, who am I to say how their healing is going to go?
Yeah. And you mentioned, well, we were chatting a bit beforehand, how you had just this curiosity all the time when you were still working in the formal clinic situation of, like, you were interested in acupuncture and how that might be helpful. And on your website, you also list things like Reiki, and I see you've got chakra sessions. So it's like you clearly have this curiosity, as you said, in how mind and body, and how it's just this whole system as opposed to we're only looking at the body. Can you kind of, how did you kind of start introducing some of those things, or why did you start introducing some of those things?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think that, yeah, after years of studying the body, it would have been 7 years of university that I spent between those 2 degrees. And then as soon as I came out of school, it was like, oh, just needing like a change of pace. And the first course I took was like Chinese acupuncture. I wanted to just learn a bit about it. And I took some levels and some exams. And then after that, it was like, you know, in sports clinics, they were wanting you to learn, or not wanting you, I mean, it was optional to learn how to needle right into a tight muscle, like right into the trigger point. And that is called IMS, or intramuscular stimulation. It's a little more focused and intense, but like, you know, that was another tool in my kit. And then I was like, well, what about a system of exercise that makes sense that people can do at home? So I went off and got my whole like Pilates rehabilitation certification, which was like, from a physio, more of a rehab standpoint, learning the very like specifics of human movement. I wanted to be able to offer that. And then I was like, okay, what about, like, honestly, Gavin, it's funny because, you know, the body, like the nerves and the muscles, and, well, not the nerves, but like the muscles and the joints and ligaments. I mean, these are the less, you know, smart tissues, right? Like, they are basically getting pushed around by, you know, the internal organs that are in sort of a little bit of a race for space. Like the body, those organs that are connected to our central nervous system through the, you know, spine and into the brain, they're the smart tissues, and they really are directing traffic. And then I feel like the rest of the skeleton and the skeletal muscles just kind of get pushed around and forced into postures or tight spots. And, you know, it's like, if we don't go deeper to like the internal organs, or look into like what emotions are held in those internal organs, you know, like what is actually going on here. And then even deeper to that, studying craniosacral, like the brain and the spinal cord, and just giving that, just, you know, just honoring it basically, then I think we're kind of missing parts of things. You know, I'm interested in the why, like the first drops in the bucket of how an injury started, instead of like the last few drops that, like, you know, created the dysfunction. And now it's like, can we patchwork that and then, you know, just get back I want to be like, no, let's get back for good. Like, let's find out where this really all started. And then that can take us on a journey into like inner child work, and
Yeah.
it goes everywhere. It can go up into ancestry. So yeah, it's wild.
Is it almost like, say someone comes in and they're like, have a very like hunched over posture, and it's wrecking their neck and their back, and it's exacerbated by being at desk all day and in cars. But then you find out they've been like, I don't know, they live with this like extreme level of anxiety, that their like nervous system is always on edge and they're always like tense. And that's actually what's causing them to be so hunched over. It's not just like a physical thing. It's, you need to resolve that mental structure so they can kind of just relax and they aren't having that tension throughout their body the entire time. Is it kind of like that almost?
That's really true. That's a great point. Exactly. I mean, even just to watch people's like sort of, the body is so intelligent. Like the wisdom it holds is incredible, right? So the body is going to hug the vulnerability, the place that is needing like support, it's going to hug it. So if someone is almost like protecting their heart because they've had so many past hurts in their life, perhaps their posture does round that way, and they're sort of, building up these walls around their heart, right? That goes into like addressing abandonments and betrayals and times where they feel their effort has not been received or appreciated by others, or their insecurities and their vulnerabilities are all tied up in that. So, you can roll on a foam roller like as much as you want on your T-spine and your back and your thoracic spine, and you can, stretch the pecs till the cows come home. But like sometimes if we don't go in and address those deeper wounds, or just slow down, right? Or like change, maybe it's more of a gentle flow yoga that's going to open you up rather than like pounding weights and trying to strengthen your back to counter the tightness of your chest. Like,
yeah. The moment you get off the rotor or the rack, you just straight back to like that tense kind of thing you're carrying around all the time. So you said you made that transition from the formal kind of clinic and working kind of under another network to your own thing about 7 years ago, or was it more like 8 years ago now?
Yeah, so in 2012, after having my son, my second child of 2, then it was just becoming sort of tough to navigate like our schedule. My husband, and this has been a journey because my husband is a pharmaceutical sales rep. So he is highly enmeshed in like medicines, and he's like, oh, so medicines don't work, Trish? And I'm saying, no, that's not true. I don't believe that. It's just that like, I'm saying there are other ways to approach injuries that I want to look at holistically. So that was, needing to just have some acceptance here, even on the family level of like, okay, she obviously knows what she's doing. She's driven and no one's going to stop her. So she just keeps going. Right. So, when COVID hit, then it was like, why would I stop offering sessions when as physiotherapists, like I was never taught about energy, and in fact, I would probably scoff at it before, like energy healing. Okay, yeah, whatever. What is that? Yeah. However, I mean, everything is in energy. And if we don't acknowledge it, and, I personally, working in a small town and being so, connected to people in the community, I was ending up in MRI machines with like pinched nerves in my necks, numbness in my hands, like hand had to be on top of my head to like even get through a day, because I was actually carrying this, like this desire to help people was so great in me that I was like carrying too much. I was carrying their hurts all around. I mean, I couldn't just roll into the grocery store and like get a quart of milk without like dodging people, because I'm like, what if their hip wasn't better? Like I was too attached to all of the outcomes. Oh, wow. And so finally, when I realized that like I am getting killed here, I have to consider that like between sessions, I've got to clear that energy. I've got to, I just was too enmeshed with it and not realizing that. So that's when I went to some, courses like therapeutic touch, like I want to understand how it is that you can treat the energetic aura that is our personal bubble around the body. How can I find holes in it? How can I understand how to smooth this out? So all these kind of courses that were not as like mentally intensive as all my university training and all my courses through craniosacral and visceral might have been some of the most profound lessons for me, because you know, there were lines in some of those texts, in those books, that said, like, you know, we can still be completely caring and compassionate and be detached from the outcome. I mean, that's a pretty profound lesson that I knew I wasn't, you know, definitely embodying.
Yeah. So some of these practices and techniques that you've brought in with your clients now, you actually got interested in kind of started exploring them at times for yourself, because you're like, I need to kind of find this balance for myself. And then you kind of started exploring a bit.
Yes. And so then I know it's kind of, I'm sorry for going back and forth, but, you know, also I think like my kids acted as catalysts for where my work went, you know, like having kids and then seeing that I was getting the runaround. And as, you know, women were constantly like nurturing and like putting others before ourselves, obviously. And, you know, I was doing that with all the clients and just getting hammered, and it was showing up physically. And yet I would go into these MRIs and these CT scans and there would be no results, but there's no findings, but I'm like hurting, like I can't even move my arm, right? So it was like, wow, this is definitely showing up, and this is just, my burden is way too heavy, I'm overstressed. And then with children, it was like my observation of my kids at young ages was like coinciding with how it shaped my work, and it's evolved my work into new places, because my kids were just like 2, 3, 4 years old, and I'd be like, why the hell do they seem like they have the worries of the world like all over them? Like, it makes no sense. You've only been here for 4 years. Why do you seem stressed like an 80-year-old? You know, and then that's what opened my mind up to like, holy, they are carrying these lineage wounds that are handed down, you know, from the lineage. And if I start to look at what was going on for my mom at that age, what was going on for my dad, what was going on for me, what was going on for my husband and his family, I saw my kids were getting kind of hammered with all this stuff. And so the kids have taught me, and then that shows up in my work. Like, it's been wild. It's a crazy ride.
No, that's incredible. There's an interview that still needs to go up, and it was with a lady who, she focuses on healing as well, and almost like life coaching, but very focused on her ovulation kind of period. So like when it's at the peak of ovulation, things like that. And she said a lot of it she got into because she just started experimenting for herself. She felt like completely out of whack, out of order. And then she started researching all the stuff. And then people started asking her about it because she was posting about it. It's almost like the same thing. You were also in this pain, this discomfort, and you're like, there must be other ways, there must be better balance. And you started looking into those things just for yourself. And then you're like, oh, wow, other people can massively benefit from this. Let me start introducing some of it.
It's true. Yes, it's true, because yeah, you know, so your own personal journey and like the pains and the hurts that you've gone through personally definitely kind of tend to make you the healing guide or facilitator you are today, right? By kind of honing in on those pain points and then connecting people through their stories, their life stories. You know, lots of times people are very reluctant to share. You know, they think they have to lay it all out. There's ways, you know, that people don't have to, you know, go as deep. You know, there's things where nowadays, you know, we can have massive shifts like in 1 to 2 sessions with me. So it's kind of unreal, like what can happen, you know, if people are just, I think if they just bring an openness and a willingness, then you can meet anyone and take them as far as they're willing to meet themselves.
So when you started, because as I mentioned this, like I really want to give people the platform to, if they want to take that jump into helping others and coaching and consulting with what they do. It's like when you moved away from that formal setting of the clinics, and it sounds like they were kind of bringing in the clients, things like that. When you made the transition to your own thing, how did you kind of get started with those first few clients? How did you kind of make that transition almost?
I mean, that's funny because so I played competitive soccer my whole life, and the highest level I played was like varsity while I was studying my physiotherapy degree. I played varsity for the University of Toronto, and then played after, for a little while. And so it would be just kind of friends through soccer that would say like, oh, hey, can you check out my hammy? Like, this is how this stuff started in 2012, when I sort of broke away from the clinic, and it was just word of mouth. And it definitely was like, it was just holding a strong belief that I knew that like this would, that word of mouth would pass and I'd be able to build it up. And it really was just through connection and just what you're able to offer and just being so authentic. I think people just want to feel held and safe, in a safe place by someone who is just so willing to be so real themselves. So I was fortunate in just that it didn't require a ton of like advertising. It really was that word sort of spread and it built up over time. It was okay for me in those years because I was navigating like the early years of motherhood. And so, just I could be part-time with it. And then it eventually just sort of built up. So I had a great following, and really up until like March of 2020, I had a huge clientele, like, of just consistent, regular customers that were getting their appointments covered because they could claim it under their extended health as physiotherapy. But then when COVID hit, I decided to, that's where my husband's going. He's pounding the pavement to try to get coverage for medicines for people that have epilepsy, and here I am just taking it away and kind of unboxing it and just saying, now you can't claim this, it's not tax deductible, it's an appointment with me, and it just is, I'm just here as your healing guide and facilitator. So I took a very like full caseload and essentially kind of like risked losing it all. And that was like, and then now I'm on that slow build right now of building back, and things are picking up again, right? But it's just a trust and a faith that like you're in the right place with your passion behind it and doing what you love. I think you start to believe so deeply in what you're doing, you're so passionate for it, that the universe starts mirroring that back to you, and people are magnetically almost attracted to, becoming your customer.
You mentioned it's like, oh, I didn't really actually have to put that much effort in or that much work in to kind of get the referrals and word of mouth at the start. But it's like all that 15, 20 years of working as what you were doing and putting out your message and sharing, imagine what you were doing with people. People knew you as that person. So that's where all that hard work was happening, was having people know what you do, like let people what you got going on essentially.
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, it was before the age of like sharing any of this like on Instagram or anything. So, I think it was just by always like having that positive, like outgoing, connecting nature, and then just showing up in your community in other ways, just everything is an opportunity to meet people and to network. And so, and just if you're bringing forward like your best self and this positive uplifting energy, I think people are drawn to it naturally. So yeah, it's true. I mean, it is true that I would be, getting my hair cut or something, and people would say, well, whatever happened to you? You were at that clinic. Like, because you can't go and take charts and phone numbers or anything. You just really leave and you've left, right? So then eventually if people find you or see you in the community, it's like, where did you go? I thought you totally quit. It's like, no, I've been doing it at home. So, it just kind of slowly built from there.
Oh, wow. So is that quite unique to your situation, that environment, that you can't, like, if you're leaving a clinic, you can't say, hey, babe, by the way, I'm going on my own. Do you want to come with me, type of thing?
There is kind of like sometimes these, non-compete clauses, that kind of thing, where you can't sort of be opening up and taking, just like I think even people like hairdressers can't just take their whole clientele, I suppose, through, word of mouth. They can't directly tell them, but it's like if they were advertising, people can find them. Obviously, they have free will and they can choose to go wherever they want. But I certainly couldn't be like going through old charts and like, picking off phone numbers. No.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. And I think, can you kind of dive a bit deeper of how things changed when COVID hit and you had to transition essentially to online, correct?
Yeah. So that was really cool, actually. So I just flipped to online. That's when I thought, okay, I'm going to actually hire, a business coach. I'm going to get things. I had zero online presence whatsoever. So it's like, felt like a good time right off the hopper. It was like, I'm going to start to like dig in and kind of have an online presence, like, sort of bring forth all my gifts and figure out what it is I do and like get out there in the world a bit. So, I knew I took a big, hit because now it's like COVID and I'm sort of saying to my husband, oh, I want to invest like this big chunk of money into like, a business program because I'm not as savvy with that stuff. I need someone to get me some branding and like pull it together. So here I was, and it's just kind of like, I just keep following the path and the steps. And I knew it's like, take out a bit of a loan to get it done, right? Like just get it done, get out there. And then when things started to pivot to online, of course, everyone was really like skeptical, like how can you help, if it's a sore shoulder, and people were mostly just used to like me fixing their physical or helping to heal their physical pains, right? And so it's like, no, this actually can happen. Like you have to trust this can happen. So there'd be the few people who are just like, okay, well, I launched it in September of 2020, where I actually like brought the branding and everything online. But in between March and September, if people wanted to see me, they could do these online appointments. And I think they were blown away. Because to be honest, Gavin, sometimes I felt like the people that like it used to really burn my ass when people would come in and be like passively lying down, like fix me, because you feel like you're just checking a box. Like I'm at physio now I'm going to just be fixed, right? So they're not really totally dialed. They're more like, okay, it's at the end of a busy work day, got the physio appointment, check, right? I'm here. When I went to online, it's like you're dialed into listening to what I'm saying, and I'm taking you on a trip. Like I'm like, okay, breathe in the feeling of like peace and calm, and breathe it into your left lower rib cage where the stomach is, and now breathe out anxiety. And so it's like taking you on a journey to like understand your body and where this stuff, people were dialed, right? So I'm going, the results can be even better because people were more like focused, and they were a healing partner that was so present.
Yeah, it forced it to become more of a team effort as opposed to just, like you're saying, fix me type of thing.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. So, so it's true that like, I mean, I treat a lot of people, that I know, like there's friends, just like around here, moms that I know, and they'll be like, come on down. And they're like, is it weird to say that I've been, hungering for your touch during COVID? So like, it's kind of true that like,
it depends on the tone and the context.
Exactly. So it's true that, if people are local, they can have the option to still like come here, get the hands-on treatment. But honestly, what has been happening online has been mind-blowing to me. Like, it's like life-changing for people, because I think people are at the point where they're so ready to be done with stuff that drags them down from the past. They're really wanting to like help pivot and like design their future freedom, that if they're ready for that, then I can meet them where they're at. And it's just like off to the races. Like, let's go. Like, let's just purge this out of where it's been living in your body. And let's get you doing what you've meant to be doing, like, connecting to your true essence and all your gifts.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like the way I interpreted when you're talking about, you made that transition to online and you had some people who were just like, yeah, let's do it. Let's give it a try. It sounds like they were almost like cheerleaders on your side. Like they were like, I trust whatever you're doing. Like I have full trust in you. Let's just give this a bash. I think that's a good thing, is pay attention to who you might be working with, who's like your absolute cheerleader. If you wanted to make not a sharp transition, but like quite a big transition, be like, hey, I want to try this new approach, this new thing. Are you down? And they might just potentially be like, yeah, let's do it. And they serve as your first testimonials, your first kind of results. You're like, oh, this actually does work. And then you can push it a bit harder.
That's true. That's true. And like, because I'll get these kind of, and I mean, they really are like, I feel, divinely inspired moments where it's like, okay, I'm hosting something, I'm calling it circle sessions. Like, it's just all of a sudden it comes to me, right? Like, we can heal in a group. Like, we can get rid and eliminate common ancestral patterns that we all carry without having to go through the pain of reliving all that trauma, but just get it out, like move it out. So all of a sudden I'm like, okay, I'm doing circle sessions, and like, within like 7, like you say, cheerleaders, people that are just like, I don't know what it is either, Trish, it's hard to understand, but like, if you're doing it, we're in there, like we're there, right? So from there, that has kind of grown, and, it has been up and down at times. Like there's times where I'm like, oh geez, because I took something that was like kind of smoke and busy, and like, it's just, rebuilding it. So to just trust the waves and the ebbs and flow with that, and to really have this strong faith and belief that like, it's just, I'm so passionate about it. There's just no way it could fail. There's no way it could not succeed.
No, that's incredible. It's just like that trust in yourself that everything's going to be okay. And it's like, whatever happens, we'll kind of sort it out. So like now that you've had, we're in June right now. So it's just under a year, I guess, like almost like 9 months since you made that transition. For people who were working, say, face-to-face or in person, and now have made that jump online, what have you found has been working like really well for you in that regards to making that transition online? In regards to growing the people you're working with, connecting with people, things like that?
Yeah, well, people are definitely kind of reluctant sometimes to like take the plunge, I find, but yet, you know, through sort of word of mouth and like, you honestly give it a try, come on in. I find that like what I'm loving to see is just that people have that just faith in themselves, the willingness to show up. Like, they're just really, I think people in general are more willing to connect in many different ways because COVID has pushed us into places that were not as comfortable, right? So that has kind of changed and elevated it for everyone. I feel like what's kind of nice is just to finally, I mean, even this connection with you, just to kind of like, just, you don't want to keep, the possibilities are endless, right? Like I'm treating people from, United States and in different provinces here in Canada. Like I would love to have international clients that go beyond sort of like the Americas. Like, I mean, how amazing is that, right? So we just have this limitless possibilities, right, for just connection, and if it speaks to someone, I think they'll find me in a way. They'll be magnetically drawn to it. At times it's true, you kind of wonder, like, showing up more, that demands our time to show up more online, to do like, I haven't been brave enough to do like Instagram lives or things like that. I do have a lot to educate and say though, so I feel like I could get on and talk on those for days.
Yeah. Hey, you could always just do like almost like shorts, if you know what I mean, just like a quick 4 or 5 minutes type thing or mindset thing, instead of like I have to put together this whole half an hour, 45-minute live or something.
Exactly, right. Yeah. So I mean, it's just, to me, it's amazing what can all happen, right?
Yeah, but I think that that what you mentioned now, it's like wanting to work beyond the USA, Canada, kind of the West Coast of everything. It's like if you've gone from working with people face to face and like in your communities, I guess your mindset and your focus has always kind of been just here. But then I guess when you make that transition online, like make the actual effort to just grow, be like, oh, I can literally connect with anyone now, and just be conscious of that fact that you can connect with anyone now, as opposed to still keeping that, oh, I just need to speak to people or reach out to people in my local area or my city type of thing.
Yeah, I think that's really true. I think that we should, just kind of harness that limitless, potentiality into like whatever we're doing, right? I think that we do get sort of like pigeonholed into like where we're at and like just who shows up at my kid's little league baseball game or like at the dance studio. But it's like we really can, connect all over, and it's exciting actually, right?
Yeah, and I think that's also an amazing point or part for us to kind of start wrapping up. And I think the energy you've brought and just the way you've approached things of having been in a formal clinic and very sciencey background and studies and all that for so long, and you've made that transition. I think that's going to be very eye-opening for people who may be in the same situation as you, or they're already in the spiritual space, but maybe they want to be bringing in more, say, sciencey and studious type things. So I really want to thank you for sharing your knowledge and part and everything today.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. It's great to connect with you.
Yeah, and if people want to reach out to you to either work with you or they just want to bounce ideas or have questions or anything like that, what's the best way for people to reach out to you? Or do you have a, say, maybe like a free resource you want to guide them to type of thing?
Yeah, I'm working on that. I definitely think I'm going to be putting on like a meditation too, and it's obviously going to be sort of body based, like take you on a little journey through the body, and then I'll probably link that on my link tree through Instagram there. So click the link in my bio. You can find me at www.healingwithtrish.com or on Instagram and Facebook as Healing with Trish. And sending me messages anytime. I encourage that. Questions, just give me a shout out. I'm always happy to just help anyone who's kind of trying to grow their business or in that same space as I am, or just has questions about really anything mindset, body, spiritual wise. I kind of feel like I have, a lot of years of knowledge there.
Yeah, no, we absolutely will add all the links and everything so it's easy for everyone to access. So yeah, thanks again so much for the time.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thanks, Gavin.
Yeah. I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Automator series as much as I enjoyed having it. And there are two things I want you to do now. I want you firstly to follow me on YouTube, get that subscription in, because you're going to see all the new episodes popping up in that case, and you can stay on top of the series. And the second thing is, I want you to reach out to me. If anything we discussed on the episode today resonated with you in regards to potentially taking a jump into an online spiritual coaching business, or you really have a business and you're wanting to grow that out and you're feeling like you could be impacting a lot more lives, but you don't quite have the time right now, you don't quite have the freedom you wanted, and you don't quite have those systems in place, I want you to reach out to me. It's a no pressure, no strings attached. Send me a message on Facebook, LinkedIn, email, whatever you prefer, and we can just have a conversation and a bit of a back and forth in regards to where you're at, what you're looking for, and how I might be able to help you impact more lives with what you're doing.